So, let's move on then and talk about a few other things around the club. We'll come back to the second half and discuss it, just before we get back underway. But let's look at the club at the minute. The transfer window, we don't want to get too deep into the transfer window as such, but we do want to mention something regarding Eamon Brophy. Now, here's a player, Adam, that, he's done really well for the club in his time here, his 3 years here. Was a big factor in the side that finished third under Steve Clarke, the winning penalty, of course, that took us to Europe. Then a penalty in Europe as well, don't forget, although it's down in Wales, but And of course, other numerous goals, did well alongside Greg Stewart as well for a time that season. He's done well at Kelly, and he's now moving on. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really tough one because when you actually isolate it, you take away the nostalgia and the sort of big goals that he's scored. You actually look at the stats. He's not exactly prolific, as he scored. If you take away the penalties, which for a lot of teams, their main strikers get a lot of penalties and they score a lot of penalties. But if you actually look at it, I think the most he's scored in a season at Kilmarnock is 6 or 7. And for a main striker, is that really good enough? Probably not. But at the same time, he's been here the last 3-4 seasons. He's always been dependable for a big goal or a goal when we need him. And it's just sad. It's more sad that we've lost him to a rival almost. As much as we hate to say it, a relegation rival this season.
Rival.
Yeah. Absolutely, our bottom 6 rival. So that's really has been tough for us. And although he leaves with the best of our wishes, I think the saddest thing for me is that it's just the way that it seems to have ended. He's had such a good relationship with all the managers and the rest of the players and the fans, and then it seems to have sort of ended in a kind of bitter way with what we hear is a falling out with one of the coaches. So
is that what you've heard?
Well, yeah, that's what I've heard. I don't know if you heard it, but
no.
That's certainly what I heard. But it's unfortunate that's the way it's ended. But at the end of the day, we just need something to change in terms of going forward. We've seen that Danny Whitehall's been doing well recently, but it's really sad. But these kind of players, as much as they might have done a lot, and we'll always remember them for the nostalgia aspect of the goal that got us to Europe and whatnot, and they'll always be a club legend for that kind of thing. It's time for these kind of players to move on when they're not quite that prolific.
I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm quite a suspicious person. I read quite deep into things, and I think, what's going on there? Eamon Brophy, for me, moving from Kilmarnock to St Mirren is not a step up. Definitely not. I don't even think it's a step across. When you look at Kilmarnock and St Mirren's recent history, Kilmarnock have been in the top flight for 20 odd years. They've got a bigger support. They're a bigger club. Why would you make that move to St Mirren? Now, again, I know I mentioned this a couple of weeks when we did this little piece. The players wanted Alex Dyer. They didn't want Alessio. They wanted Alex Dyer. They got what they wanted. And now we find ourselves in a situation where players like Eamon Brophy don't want to be here under the manager that they wanted. What's going on? What is going on? I don't get it. I don't get it, and I think it's quite concerning. If you're a Kilmarnock supporter and you're seeing Eamon Brophy making a move to St Mirren because he's not happy here, that is concerning. Now, number of things. Why is the manager not starting him? Why is he not playing him? For me, he is the best of him and Kabamba. Forget Whitehall, this is a new thing now. Whitehall's come into the team, right? But between him and Kabamba, they should either be playing the two, or if between the two, it should be Brophy. I mentioned it 2 weeks ago. Every time the ball goes up to Kabamba, it's bouncing off him. He's nowhere near it. I don't even think we should be playing the one up front. But anyway, back to Brophy. So he's obviously not happy. We've seen in the interview on Kelly TV earlier on the other week there against it, and you maybe didn't see it because you were here. He was saying how he was frustrated that he wasn't getting into the team and starting more games. And I'm with him on that. I'm frustrated about it. I think he should have been in the team. And I think that's part of the reason he's left. I think he's not too keen on Alex Dyer. He's went, he doesn't fancy me. He doesn't fancy me playing every week. I'm out of here. So that's one thing. The second thing is money a factor? What's going on there? Is he getting paid more at St Mirren than he is here? Because if he is, again, I'm concerned. How have St Mirren got more money than us? Where have they got money that we don't? Oh, okay, they get 200 grand for Kyle McGuinness. They get a wee bit, I think, from the John McGinn, did they not, maybe?
Yeah.
But haven't we had money as well in recent times?
Yeah, so again...
So it's... Why can we not afford to keep Eamon Brophy? Is there something going on behind the scenes we don't know?
That's a whole separate aspect of what the fans have been talking about in recent months as well, is the sort of clarity about the financial situation and just the visibility of the directors, which has been pretty non-existent
Yeah.
or poor. Let's be honest, and this is only going to add to that. Wondering, how can St Mirren afford to offer him a more lucrative deal than ourselves? And if it's not that, then it must be something to do with him not getting played, or
Yeah, I think,
or he's not happy here, or something like that.
I think he doesn't want to be here. Yeah, I do. I do. So maybe we're thinking a wee bit too much then about the money side of things. Maybe he just doesn't want to be here. But I think it's very frustrating because, again, you know me, I don't think Alex Dyer should be the manager. You know that. I don't think he is cut out to be the manager. I think most Kilmarnock fans think that. But I think we're now going to find ourselves in a situation where we're going to go into decline here. Because all of these players that are going to run down their contracts, the majority of the team players in the team are out of contract, aren't they?
Yeah,
The likes of Finlay and
that's
that.
an issue for you, isn't it? Just the fact that there's so many players. We don't. I think at the end of the season we've got 4 or 5 players signed up. That's it. Everyone else is completely out of contract, and there's been no sort of, apart from Danny Whitehall in midweek, there's been no sort
That's
of
only
attempt
6 months
to.
again, isn't it?
Yeah, there's been no sort of attempt to actually make new deals for any of these players that we're seeing anyway.
Mhm.
And if we're not seeing them, and they're happening, then it clearly means that they've not so far been successful. So that's a bit of a worry, and it's something that maybe we need to look at.
So slightly aside from the Brophy thing and discussing that, the window a wee bit more and the players in the future, do you think that COVID-19 and the crisis and the uncertainty of the fans is having a major impact, perhaps a bigger impact at our club than maybe clubs like St Mirren? Because we're seeing 6 month deals everywhere.
Yeah.
There's nobody at the minute is tied up on a long term contract. But nobody's signed a contract this year, have they? That's tied them up for any longer than the end of this season.
Yeah, I think that was the thing at the very start. That when all this started, and there was no fans, people were saying, "Oh, it's going to be the small clubs that are going to suffer most, and they're going to be in real trouble." But actually, it might actually be the bigger clubs that are having more of a financial impact because they've got a much bigger wage budget. They've got a lot more overhead, and they need the thousands of fans that come in a whole lot more
to justify the wages.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe that's why we're not able to offer anything yet, because this financial situation is tough, and we don't know how long this is going to go on for, how long we're going to be until fans keep coming back in again, and they're buying programs and pies and season tickets and everything. So that's an issue.
Do you think that somebody from the board should be coming out and explaining the situation a bit more to the fans? Do you feel as if we're in the dark a wee bit, or do you think we can read through the lines and understand it ourselves?
No, I think we're in the dark a wee bit, absolutely, and it's not helpful that we are in the dark in that, and then you see on the forums and things like that everyone's just speculating, and surely it's better that someone from the club, most hopefully Billy Bowie, comes out and says, this is where we are, this is what the financial situation is like, we're hoping to get such and such on a contract and whatnot, rather than just letting the sort of rumours and the speculation fester, and it's just going to get worse and worse. And when we keep not winning games, everyone's mood's just going to get down and down, and everything that sort of Steve Clarke built up over the last couple of years is just going to be completely gone.
Well, I think it's already disappearing down the pan pretty quickly. Steve Clarke always said, I need to keep the nucleus of the squad, and even when I leave, I need to have everyone tied down in contracts so that there's something there for the club after that. Pretty soon there won't be.
Yeah.
Pretty soon. I actually think we're going to have a complete reset, a brand new squad, and probably a brand new manager come the summer. Would you agree with that?
Well, at the minute it looks that way, certainly, with only a couple of players tied down. I think there's only a couple of first team players in that. A lot of the others are youths as well. I think Alan Power is one of the only first team players that's actually contracted beyond the summer. So it looks like there's going to be a whole new squad. And listen, it might be the same for a lot of the teams in the division, but certainly for Kelly, we've got all these great players here that are certainly good enough to be in the top 6 and maybe even challenging for European places, and yet we're going to lose all of them in the summer if we don't get the contract situation sorted.
Yeah. So do you think it's as much to do with the players not being happy, such as Brophy, as it is to do with the financial situation as well? I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah, listen, as we say, we're just sort of guessing at this stage, and unless someone comes out and says the financial situation is pretty bad, then we'd be able to say, maybe it's not the players at the minute, and maybe it is just the financial situation. But for as long as nobody on the board comes out and says, if they come out and say our financial situation is good, then we know that it's maybe something to do with the players or the manager, or they're just not happy. So as we say,
and
if we get people coming out and saying things and being clear, then the rumours and the speculation will go away.
And here's one for you, Alex Dyer. Would he still be the manager if it wasn't for the COVID crisis? Do you think the money would be there to just pay him off and go, there you go, or what do you think about that? Do you think do you think Kilmarnock were always going to give him time anyway?
Yeah, again, it's difficult to say because we've not really had a lot of chat from Billy Bowie about his future plans and whatnot, and we know that Billy Bowie is quite keen to give managers time. We didn't for Alessio, but that's because there was almost a
There was something
full-scale
going on.
player
Yeah.
revolt in the dressing room, so he didn't really have a choice. But yeah, it's quite keen to give managers time, and it looks like he's keen to give Alex Dyer time. Obviously, the win a couple of weeks ago kind of saved his job for the time being, and obviously the letter, which we'll talk about a bit, will have extended that period as well, because it's just bad optics for the club to sack a manager in the weeks after that incident happened. But yeah, he seems keen to give him time, but you'd have to think that unless something dramatic happens, then if these kind of results keep up, then it won't be long. But it's maybe just fortunate that pretty much all the other teams in the bottom six are not picking up the points alongside us.
See, to be honest, I mean, I was speaking to a few people, a few fellow Kelly fans. They seem to think if Alex Dyer lost today, he'd be gone. I don't think that way. I honestly think the club are in a position now. I've just got the feeling that money is an issue with the situation with COVID, and I just think the club are going to roll the dice and hope to get through over this bumpy road to the end of the season and try and restart in the summer. That's what I think they're going to do.
Yeah, and I think one thing you could say, one piece of evidence we've got of that was a message from the director of the Kelly Trust last night. He said that the club put some people back on furlough as well, which I know a lot of companies are doing, but with the football actually going on at the minute, then that is a bit more surprising. So you could read something into that, you could not, but generally I think just we need a bit more accountability, and we need to start picking up results, and hopefully if we get the results, then everything else will fall into place, and players might want to sign new contracts and things like that. So if things go well on the pitch, then everything goes well off the pitch. But as long as things aren't going so well on the pitch, then everything off the pitch just becomes magnified and becomes a much bigger issue than maybe it actually is.
Clark, I think Clark always said if you play well on the pitch, everything else will take care of itself, didn't he? And he's right. He's right.